Hey, Steve, you're here. You're really
Hey,
here.
I'm here. Hey, Chris. Hey, Joey.
What's happening? Hi. Hi, hello.
What's
So,
happening? Hot stuff.
ugh,
Oh, oh,
Sorry.
oh no.
oh, you flatter me. It'll get you everywhere, boy.
So, we actually have a packed show tonight. We are doing chapter 2 of Drowning in Games in 2023, even though I think technically we're all working on something primarily from not 2023. But either way, we have been playing a bunch of games that have been coming out and everything. I got one game that I actually beat last week,
You
and
beat a
others that I'm working
game?
on.
Wait, you beat a game?
I beat all
People
of
do
the
that?
games. Yes, I can actually finish a game. I mean, it's unbelievable.
What is this beat a game that you speak of?
Well, let's start with a game that I have not actually beaten, and that you have played too, Joey, on Game Pass.
hmm
Wolong
hmm
Fallen Dynasty, and just that's my character right there on the stream. Nothing special, but you were making a big deal of the character creator. So rather than talk about combat mechanics, let's first talk about the character creator, huh?
So it's really good. Like the fact that you can go as like with a fine tooth comb through the different features of your character, like the laugh lines of their mouth. Okay, like the edging of their eyelids. It's really wild. It's just a little bit more complicated than complex I should say than Neo 2. Um like Neo 2 still kind of takes the cake for me in that like you can also have two demon forms that you can also customize on top of your character, which is amazing. Um so I'm gonna endorse Neo 2 while I'm at it. But Wolong, on the other hand, I visually I don't think it's all that stunning. This engine definitely
No, it's definitely a
dated.
PS4, Xbox One game as well. Like you get the next gen version for the performance, the reliable
Right.
performance.
And the resolution.
Yes,
But
it's just one of those games where, and I think a lot of Japanese games, especially because these studios aren't huge,
yeah.
like a lot of Western studios are becoming bloated and everything. But I think what you get is a trade off, right? They don't have the greatest of
Yeah.
graphics, but they've got a lot more polish. And with Wolong, there's definitely a lot of that. And I'm
Yeah.
actually, like, it's funny. I feel like this game is surprisingly, like, I've talked to you like easy in comparison to what I played in the first
Yeah.
Neo, and I haven't played Neo 2.
Neo
And
2 is like a little bit less hard than Neo 1.
yeah,
So,
and I've heard Neo 2
it's
is brutal.
still dude, Neo 2 is brutal. Like even with co-op, it is brutal, but it is also really really fun. And Wolong takes like everything that was great about Neo as far as like combat mechanics, and other gameplay mechanics and the character customization, um, and art style, and boss fights. It takes everything that worked really well and simplified it, streamlined it, made it more soulsy in that like everything just kind of seems cohesive, like a single map. It feels like that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Neo and Neo 2 were like, okay, you pick a level on this map and then you go there and then it plays like a Souls game. Like they're just like, separate maps. Which was fine for the pacing that they were going for. But this one I think it's so far, and I'm still very early into it. Like I think I've beaten 3 bosses at this point, or I'm about to approach the 3rd one. Love the gameplay, love the mechanics. The enemy placement is really, really good. It still forces you to slow down and really think about what you're gonna do next. But it's also got other enemies that you should probably take out before you just start, going all willy nilly and kiting enemies. It's I feel it's really intelligently set up as far as like each moment to moment thing is concerned. It's
Yeah.
less like trying to copy Souls, like and more like taking what they learned from Neo 1 and Neo 2, and I guess to an extent Stranger of Paradise.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna
And
say, because a lot of people have already made the comparison, this is kind of their answer to Sekiro, but even then, it
kinda,
feels very different. Well, that's the funny thing, because what little I played of Sekiro, like that's the weird thing. Like, yeah, this focuses very heavily on parrying, but it doesn't feel like Sekiro does, and especially doesn't feel like you
yeah.
need to be good at parrying, like you need to be good at parrying in Sekiro. Like
Yeah.
the latest boss I fought, his big attack, I never figured out the timing for. I didn't need to. I killed him anyway. Like it's
Huh.
one of those
Yeah, it
things.
does seem really forgiving, except for the tutorial. The tutorial is deceptively hard.
That's the funny thing. The tutorial is the toughest part. Mostly in two areas. The random tiger that it drops, which one of the screenshots you'll see passing by, my character's just throwing a poison spell. And it's because I was like, you know what? Get the drop on it, run right back up to the rooftop and just chuck poison. Chuck poison and let it die. Like,
Yeah.
that was my answer to how to fight it. Like, and
That's why I
it
also
worked,
like.
but
There's a lot of options for each scenario. Like you can, like, there's enough verticality that you can take advantage of the terrain and try to
Oh,
jump
yeah.
on people or kite enemies and try to like force them to take time to have to climb up to where you are, so you can, I don't know, use an item or heal or whatever. There's a lot of like terrain strategy, like terrain-based strategy that you can take advantage of, and it's fun.
I'd say that's probably the game's greatest strength is its level design.
Yeah.
I'm really, which that kind of is what surprises me at the same time about, because that's the thing. Like everything else, like something about this game doesn't feel, despite the polish, despite a lot of the clearly good design, something about it feels like the handheld Souls game, and that's like a really bad way to put it. But it's the closest thing I could compare, where it's like ever since the handheld was a thing, the most handheld games of a franchise always felt like the little brother, always lacking something. And this one, it's not polish it's lacking. It's not like enemy AI or whatever, like, but there is something here missing that it does not feel like. This feels like it was a really well done side project, but it doesn't feel like this was Koei Tecmo's latest or Team Ninja's latest like main project.
Yeah, there's something that Neo and Neo 2 have that this one doesn't. I can't quite put my finger on it, especially because like when it comes to the aesthetic, the gameplay, the setting, the monster design, like it is all pretty much, in my opinion, on point. But there's something here that Neo and Neo 2 has that this game doesn't, and I don't know, maybe it is just that difficulty that just, pick you up by the neck and just beat you in the balls over and over and over.
And what I'm wondering is, with that first boss, especially the second phase, you don't have a co-op partner to help out. And so you really do have to master that first boss. Whereas after that, everyone that I've played so far has a AI co-op partner. And
At least one.
At least one. And that allows sloppier play sometimes. And that might be it. Like, the game is challenging. At the same time, I've also done a lot to, because like you say, like the terrain, I very much look for back alleyways, back routes. Like, I look for everywhere but the direct confrontation to an enemy. And I make really good use of the bow and arrow. Like,
yeah, the bow and arrow is so good in this game. Like,
yeah.
Oh, I love it.
And I know
headshots matter.
Yeah, and I know Neo was similar, where headshots would matter.
Yeah.
And it had the crosshair where, okay, this is what it looks like when you're, going to hit the enemy altogether. but then it looks different when you're going to headshot, and it's very subtle. And this one is just, the dot in the middle of the crosshair doesn't change color until you're lined up with a head. Right. And so it very clearly communicates what will and will not be a headshot. And so you don't waste any arrows, and you can take out a whole bunch of mooks real easy. Or sometimes if there's like a high level warlock, that you can headshot one hit and then drop the morale of everything else around you, dude, boom, there you go, right there. Like this. Yeah. The funny thing is, and that's the thing though, is like there is that something missing here that I've played the game, I've enjoyed it, but I'm not like, I don't feel that need to go back. So it's able to sit there for a while, and when I have a little bit of time, I'll go back and I'll play more of it. But
yeah,
there's something.
Would
maybe
you say that maybe it lacks soul?
I hate you sometimes.
That was bad. That was bad.
It was very bad.
Hey, you're a father, so it's okay. Dad jokes all over the place.
That's right.
He's allowed. He gets a pass.
Don't encourage him.
Gonna already did.
But no, well, anyway, that's enough yammering on about it. I do think, Steve, this one might be worth giving a go. But again, Game Pass and your Xbox is currently in your dungeon, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see if I can somehow. I mean, it's not like I honestly don't mind playing in the dungeon. It's more just like when I get up in the morning.
Explain what the dungeon actually is.
No. Leave it a mystery.
Leave it a mystery.
Let's just say it's where the bad consoles go or something.
Bad consoles go.
Yeah, I think it's more just a matter of, yeah. Usually, a lot of times, like I'm playing something like it in the morning, and it's been things that are more. Well, Elden Ring is definitely
That's last. Save that.
Yes. Anyway, yeah. I'm not gonna get into it, but it's maybe I'll go in the dungeon and play some Wolong. It sounds interesting.
It's neat. I definitely think it's worth checking out.
Yeah, especially if it's easier. Like, not that I need it to necessarily be easier. Like, I'm doing fine in Elden Ring, but if it's easier, Souls-like ninja combat, that sounds interesting to me.
Just be careful with that first boss, because it took me 40 minutes.
Yeah, that first boss. I mean, it's the toughest part of the game.
Well, so far it is. Yeah,
so far.
Yeah. Which I'm sure it gets harder, but like, I don't know. There's just a lot of options that they give you in the game, and like if you've even touched a Soulsborne game before, then you're like, this is the thing. It really is like a baby's first Souls game.
So it'll be perfect for me.
Yeah, and like if you've played a Soulsborne game before, then you kind of understand how hard those games are, and you got to really pay attention to the surroundings, the enemy patterns and movements and all that. And what you can do, like, to even gain the slightest advantage. Like, what you would do in those games would give you far more, like, a far better advantage in this game.
Someone forgot to silence their phone.
It's Mega Man Zero sounds, man. It's relevant.
Anyway, speaking of what people have been playing, Steve, you've been on the Xenoblade train.
I have been on the Xenoblade train because I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2 recently, and I played Xenoblade Chronicles 1 before that. Probably all in the last like year and a half. I've played 1, 2, and now I'm playing 3.
Oof.
And honestly, like 3 is the game I guess I was hoping 2 would be or would turn into. Really seems that it feels more like this is what should have been the sequel to 1 and not 2. From a tone perspective, I think the gameplay does actually have it pulls a lot of the better changes to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 into the gameplay. But it's more the storytelling, I think, that actually really gets me personally. How would you say it? I think I described it on like the Discord that it's sort of like if Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was what the people who made Xenoblade Chronicles made after like binging like shonen anime. This is what they make after like stopping and reading some classic science fiction, like some Robert A. Heinlein or something like that. Especially, I think Heinlein, just because of the way it presents war and the way it uses, you know, essentially like teenagers, children forced into a lifestyle of war and what it does to them and all of that other stuff. So it's really good. The other thing I like is this is one of those stupid things that I personally hate in RPGs, and that's party management. Like, you know, there's always a party that works, but then you feel bad, like, leaving all your other characters on the bench, and depending on how the progression works, you may need to be constantly swapping characters in and out so that they learn key abilities, because at some point, they're going to split your party up, and you're going to have to use those characters you've neglected the whole time, and all that kind of stuff. Where this just basically says, oh, there's 6 characters. You've got 6 characters, you know, all the time. Oh, we're adding like somebody else in your party temporarily. Now you've got 7 characters. And it works really well the way that they execute it. So I'm really enjoying this. A little over 20 hours in. The first 10 hours is like a little more on rails, very story focused, kind of gets you into the world, into the story. You get your first inciting moment kind of thing. Next 10 hours, it kind of opens up, lets you do a lot of side quests, explore the open world a little more. And I feel like I just hit that next moment that's going to start driving the story forward again. And yeah, just really, really solid overall. Probably with the RPGs I've been playing lately, this is my favorite I've played in a while in terms of JRPGs. So that would include like a whole ton of Tales games, you know, all that garbage that we talked about on the Game of the Year podcast and all that other stuff. So yeah.
Before moving on,
highly recommended.
Before asking you some questions, I want to just point out this bot is telling me to go to dogehype.com. How old is this bot if it's asking for dogehype.com?
I mean, Dogecoin is like still a thing.
Yeah, but it was nobody thinks about Dogecoin anymore. Putting it all in dog money. Anyways, but no, see, like one of the things I was going to ask you, because we talked about this a bit when we hung out last. Well, firstly, in what ways do you think this compares to the first one? Like, what are your thoughts compared to? Because I know already you're liking this a lot better than Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But this one, like when it comes to Xenoblade Chronicles 1. Because granted, one of the things we discussed was Xenoblade Chronicles 1 starts real strong. And then it kind of, meanders a little bit, and then it wakes up again, and then towards the end, it just kind of peters out, I feel like. So obviously you can't make a full comparison, but it sounds like it starts strong.
Yeah, so I would say this, so Xenoblade Chronicles 1, it starts really strong. And I would say 2, actually, the beginning, early on, there's some really good stuff in 2 as well. Where this I feel like this is paced a lot better. Where 1, when I played it at least, like, it's the intro stuff, the sort of first couple big fights and all that, cool. And then you sort of end up like doing fetch quests for a long time, and at least that's how kind of I did. I got caught up in the side quests, and it lost a lot of steam until around, I'd say, about like 20-25 hours in for me. I feel like this didn't lose the steam at any point. And again, this is coming from somebody who's, if anybody's going to lose steam, it's the guy who played Xenoblade 1 and 2 within the last year, this hasn't really lost steam yet for me. It's really maintained the momentum, and even where it opened up a little bit, I felt like the side quests I did felt more integral to the story and everything than the side quests did in Xenoblade Chronicles 1. So I feel like this is I think if you liked Xenoblade Chronicles 1, I think this is probably, I would say skip 2 and go right to 3, because this feels more like an improvement of 1. Where 2 felt like they did a lot of experiments, but didn't really capture what 1 did well.
Okay. I think that's fair.
And in regards to that combat, because I know Xenoblade Chronicles 1 was very much about it wasn't just about like what kinds of attacks you used one after the next, like the breaks and everything, but also positioning. How, with 6 characters all in the mix, how does that, like, how do they work with that? Like, do they simplify some aspects to make other aspects a bit more complex, or?
So the way it kind of works is to start, you get 3 roles with like 6 sub roles, kind of. So the 3 roles are, attacker, tank, and healer. And then there's sort of like one of the tanks is a more of a damage absorption tank versus more of a like hybrid tank. And then one of the attackers is again more of the side and back attack focused attacks, while the other is more of like a frontline attacker. And then the 2 healers, one of them is more focused, I guess not really healers, like a support. One's more focused on healing, the other's more focused on buffs. So you kind of, what do you say? You're only controlling one character at a time, but each character kind of also, most of the, you create the tanks and the supports in particular create rings on the battlefield around them, or the healers can cast rings, but usually they kind of end up being right where the healer is. That will, cause some effect. So inside of the defender ring, or the main tank ring, I guess you could say, you're getting a bonus to defense, but also I believe raising your aggro a little bit. Whereas, inside the other ring, you're getting a bonus to attack. So when you're positioning as an attacker, or other things, you're positioning yourself based on where the aggro is focused versus, where you're getting buffs. So it does kind of, they added some interesting elements to that. And then it seems like I've only learned a few additional classes. It seems like they're kind of mostly variations on that. And part of the whole system is that you kind of, in order to get so far, you kind of just switch around the classes, because as you progress, you unlock more levels, but initially you only get 10 levels of each class. So you kind of want to switch around to make sure everybody's at level 10 in as many classes as possible. So even if you don't change your player character, which you can be any of the 6 characters, you sort of get a feel for the different classes as your player character, or you can switch around and like always be the sort of flanking attacker if you want. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot of depth, but the flow is very simple, actually.
Huh. Okay. Okay.
It sounds real interesting. I will have to get to it eventually.
Right.
Yeah, I honestly, I bought it and I regretted buying it immediately, and then I started playing, and I stopped regretting buying it pretty quickly.
And it does seem closer to, because that's the thing. Like I got Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and it's been sitting in shrink wrap for a long time, and I never started it because something about it was just like, I don't think I want to play this though. And Yeah, this seems closer to what I want out of an actual Xenoblade game. So,
Well, what's wrong with collecting waifus, huh?
nothing. It's just the battle mechanics have to be good.
I mean, sure, they do. But Cosmos is in it.
Anyways, speaking of games you've been playing, and it's not new by any means, unless you count the fact that it's new to Nintendo Switch Online. Super Mario Land 2, which I was actually surprised there were a lot of people that tuned into your stream and were like, I never played this. And granted, I don't know. I think I played a little bit of it, but I never owned it. I didn't. I got Wario Land 3. So despite being, a Mario game on a very popular Game Boy, not a lot of people played this one.
Yeah, it's. I recall saying in my stream that it's weird to think that a Mario game could be a hidden gem, right? Because it's Mario. Everybody knows Mario. Even the bad games that Mario's been in, like Mario's Time Machine.
Oh,
everyone knows about that one.
The other one is worse, I think. What's the other one?
Like the one on the Hotel Mario?
Mario is Missing. No. No, Mario's Time Machine is the worst one. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, Mario is Missing isn't worse.
I mean, this is a discussion for a whole different day, but if Mario's Time Machine could have actually stopped me from gaming, it was so bad. But I had nothing else to do at when I was a little long fetus. So but yeah, Super Mario Land 2. 6 golden coins. It's a really, really fun game that is also very strange. Like, if you couldn't tell with the images that are going by, at one point Mario's a spaceman. There's the 3 little pigs that you're fighting. There's some weird Lego level, some Lego looking level. There's a level where you fight giant ants because you've been turned tiny, and it's called the macro zone when you go there. Like, they're all zones, like it's Sonic. It's such a strange little game, but is so much fun and so unique. Like, for a platformer, I would strongly recommend that you check this out, because this was obviously post Super Mario World, and they did a good job at bringing over a couple mechanics from Super Mario World into the Game Boy. Like, the graphics for a Game Boy game are really nice. Yeah, and there's that Halloween level. There's the pumpkin zone or whatever, where it's got like a Jason Voorhees enemy with a knife in its head. It's so bizarre.
It doesn't seem very much like what you'd expect. Honestly, and it would be great if they did do, like, if they remade some of these kinds of games.
Yeah.
With like just a little bit of modern polish, a modern bit of spit shine. Because, I mean, they remade Link's Awakening, right? So why not Mario Land 2?
Yeah, especially if they could, because I think Link's Awakening was like an Unreal Engine 4 or something like that. We could get an Unreal Engine Mario.
Yeah, Grezzo decided to use Unreal Engine, and that's why it would occasionally have frame rate hiccups, because
yep.
Yeah.
It looked nice, though.
Maybe they can work with Square and use Luminous Engine, because it's proven so good for platforming.
Let's just work with Capcom and use RE Engine, please.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that forever. But yeah, this is a, like, there's honestly not much more I can say about this other than, like, this game is so weird. There's a ton of replay value because it's a Mario game. It's a really fun platformer with secret levels all over the place. The power-ups are fun. And like he's got a little feather on his head when he uses when you have the fire flower. It's like he's a pyromancer or something.
I don't know if that's what they were going for.
I don't know either. I don't know either, but like that's the only thing I can think of is like a Native American headdress or something.
That's probably what they were going for, yeah, because they needed a way to make sure it's like, how do we tell that he's got the fire flower? Because that was one of the issues of Mario Land. When you got the fire flower, there was like no visual change. So it was like, how do you tell? You just press the button that shoots the fireballs, I guess.
That's the beauty of this game. They really did work really well with what limited, you know, with the limitations of the Game Boy.
And it was an opportunity to introduce a new villain in Wario.
And then he's never a villain again. He's just kind of, you know,
anti-hero, kind of, yeah.
Or rival or something.
Rival, because that's the thing. Wario Land 3 was the game that followed, and you play as Wario. And rather than like getting... Well, that's the thing, because you got the different hats. I guess that's one of the, where they differentiated a bit, because technically it wasn't the hat in other Mario games that really changed. Like, again, Mario World, you get the cape, right? It's not a different hat. You had the Tanuki tail as well as the ears in Mario Brothers 3. So they really did the whole different hats thing in Wario Land 3. And dude, the soundtrack is very different in style and tone to Wario Land as well.
Like they called it Super Mario Land 3 Wario Land. And because there was a Wario Land that was on Game Boy before the Game Boy Color one, which is weird. I remember this because it was like not. It's
Wario
not
Land
the one
was not originally Game Boy Color, because that's how that again I got it, and I got it for regular old Game Boy.
Yeah, it was so odd. Such a like the Wario games are just such a strange spin-off. I'm looking forward to playing the Wario Land 3 game or whichever it is on.
It is Switch. It is Super Mario Land 3.
Yeah.
So eventually that should hopefully come onto the service. So.
And same with Wario Land on the Game Boy Advance one, whichever one that was, the fourth one.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. I forget what was different about that, but all right.
But yeah, play Super Mario Land 2. It's really fun. It's really strange. You're gonna have a good time, and it's also not a long game. So. And there's lots of levels to experience. It's if you haven't tried it out, you definitely should.
Now, as for me, I recently played through and completed Like a Dragon Ishin, which, if you're not familiar, Like a Dragon is what the Yakuza series has always been known as. And I guess starting with this one, they've decided they're gonna stick with the Like a Dragon worldwide. That's just the name of the series now. And so Ishin was originally a PS3 game that was a spin-off series where it takes place during I think Ishin is a reference to the time period. I don't know specifics. Like, that's the funny thing. They technically, certain dialogue will have a glossary option where you can click it and you can get certain keywords explained. But there's so many more keywords I need explained. I'm guessing that some of these are like even words that common, like regular Japanese folk won't really know. But for us Westerners that are really not familiar with a lot of this history, there's so much more they needed to add and help explain. And they keep on using the phrases over and over. So it's like, okay, I get it. I get who the Bafuku who are, even if I can't get their name right in my head.
Bafuku gods?
Bafuku is a faction, and I get who the Shinsengumi are, and I get their relations, and blah, blah, blah. I don't get some of this other crap. Like, you keep throwing terms and words at me. But no, it's funny to try and describe these games, because it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a Yakuza game. It's got about what you'd expect. How do you describe a Yakuza game when you play, like, I mean, how many have I played? I think this is my 10th one. And I still got 3 entries of the main series to play. Which is just crazy to contemplate. But it's like, this is like my 10th one. And they all have very similar styles to it. This is definitely one of my favorites. Even though it's interesting because, again, speaking of Unreal Engine, they took the original game and converted it into the Unreal Engine to help give it some of that facelift, but it's still got that, this is definitely definitely a touched up PS3 game going on, which does make me wonder, like the new games, I think, do we know if the new games are only next gen?
Because there's another one coming out this year.
The Like a Dragon Gaiden, which is going to be...
That should be just Kiryu, right?
Kiryu between 6 and 7.
Yeah,
and then
I don't know.
Because that's the thing, like, if they can just focus on next gen, like, because I think they are reworking their engine or something, or they're starting to work in something new. Because there's aspects of these games that do need an uplift.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're so good, man. I mean, and part of it's like, okay, there's a sheer huge number of mini games you can do. There's all the different, but I think with this one, it's that a lot of these activities do work together towards improving your character. The problem is, really quickly you can start to tell that there's a real grind needed if you want to 100%. And I even needed to do a grind just to get like really good weapons for heading into the end game. And it's weird too, because even when you have really good weapons, you don't necessarily just stroll through the end of the game. Right. So there's a lot of work for not the greatest of benefit. So I don't know. I'm not sure what was going on in their mind when it came to trying to make sure you couldn't, like, other than a lot of these Japanese games, they have these really heavy grinds because if you want to 100% that game, you gotta earn it. And I don't know, I guess people get really obsessive with playing just one title or something. I don't know. But this was at the same time the Yakuza game where I got the closest to 100% completion of certain things, like the side stories. Which is kind of a shame because a lot of the side stories here, I don't know if they're not as good as what I've gotten used to, or the fact that I'm getting way too used to how side stories work in this series. Like, you start a side story and you know, like, you can start to predict what the twist is going to be by the end. Like, oh, it's really going to be something like this. They're setting up your expectations and it's going to turn out to be something like this. And that might be the downside of playing so many of these games, that some of the crazier things that used to make it such an individualistic franchise kind of starts to deteriorate. And I think that's where definitely Yakuza 7 made the right move in jumping genres, because it allowed them to transfer that goofiness to a whole new genre and therefore portray it in a brand new way.
Yeah, there's I think that's a really good point, because Yakuza Like a Dragon, Yakuza 7, really, like, it really did take the wackiness way to the next level by having these outlandish enemies that just seem so completely insane, like the oiled up dudes on like the slippery mats or whatever. I don't understand how anyone thought of that as like an enemy type. But I think it's brilliant because I've never seen anything like it. And you do, like, they incorporated that weird character, that weird aspect of them as like how they attack and their animations. Like, it's really, really fresh. So, and it's like you said, this Ishin is, it's clearly a PS3 game that they updated visually. So you're gonna feel the age there. You won't necessarily see it, but you'll feel it. But, I was expecting that would happen. So it's something I'm keeping in mind whenever I finally get the game.
At the same time, I will say the combat's probably, especially of the PS3 kind of era, probably some of the best they did of that time period. Because when it comes to the brawling combat, I still think Lost Judgment is where they perfected it there. They haven't, none of the games beforehand got it as much as that one did, especially in making sure the boss fights were not like filled with BS. Because you go through some of the older games, and these bosses won't flinch to anything. They have this incredible ability to like cancel all of your attacks. It's almost like you have to just keep chugging items and rely on cheats in a way. In this one,
like you gotta find a way to cheese the boss in order to actually get through it.
This one has 4 different combat styles. I admittedly stuck to 2 primarily and 1 as a favorite. Because that's actually the downside is I barely touched Brawler, which is the traditional fist fighting. And I imagine if you level that one up, it could probably be really powerful. But it's tough to do, like to really justify it when your best defensive options, especially when you're just getting used to the system, are in the sword slinging ones. And there is a gunslinger option, but that one's kind of boring and also has some of the least defensive options available. So you end up with your traditional swordsman, which has probably some of your better, more reactive defensive options and does a lot of your best damage in terms of offense. But then you have Wind Dancer. Wind Dancer is weaker but swift cuts. You can use your gun at nearly any time in a combo, but the way the dodge works you can have such an unlimited chain combo, and the dodge is almost a iframes win button because like it's great for boss fights. It has a lot of heat actions that allow you to, use a heat action when an enemy is coming to attack you. You can dodge so many of their attacks with ease. And again, like you can finish off a combo with a pistol shot, do some decent damage, or you can chain your regular attack with a B button attack and then suddenly conclude with just shooting everywhere and knock an entire crowd down. And so there's so many options with the Wind Dancer that it's, by the end of the game, it got boring because you could unlock abilities because it used to, at the start of the game, you can only have so many attacks before your combo just finishes. You can't blend into another one unless you use that dodge attack and then start a new combo. So it's this weird, really interesting sort of management of like counting your button presses to keep your combo going, but it's like count your button mashing until the end where you can just chain regular attacks into each other without breaking the combo and only needing to dodge when an enemy is attacking. And then you're just literally mashing the button and you're winning. And so it's not the greatest, but it's still like boss fights, fortunately, still require more attention. And there's definitely still reason to switch over to your regular swordsman for boss fights or duels, as it were. Especially for its heat action options. So it's definitely a good game, but where its strength really does lie is the story, as these games is usually the case. With this one, by being a spinoff, what really gets me about it is, and it's this thing that, again, it's funny because, again, you can look at the stinking, not to take a drink, everybody, The Last of Us TV show, and the guy headlining it is like, Last of Us has the greatest story told in a video game because it's not about laser beams from the eyes. And it's like a Dragon Ishin, which let's remember this is technically a PS3 game, but I'll give credit that it wasn't out until this year, but in the West until this year. Takes the situation in Japan at the time period, which is isolation just ended, foreign ships have come ashore, and now Japan is divided. Those that want to remain loyal to the empire, the emperor and the imperial system and the way things were and classism, and those that want to change. And by this divided nature, you then have divided relationships, and every character has a sort of, and maybe this is a slight spoiler, but just about every character has a double life. So it's this sort of taking something and taking the period of history and using that to inform your entire narrative and all of your characters. And it's this, and the thing is, like, most people, you could probably play the game and not really pick up on it. But it's just one of those things where by the end of the game, I was realizing, and I'm like, holy crap. But like, because it amazes me that they're able to do something like that with how many of these games they put out. Like, I think that's what's baffling. This is technically one of those franchises where they put out so many, and they use so many of the same assets, they use so many of the same mechanics and stuff, that people get sick of, like, Assassin's Creed for having a formula, right? People get sick of Ubisoft for having a formula, and yet here it gets a pass? Why? And I think one of the reasons, again, because as I just said, the combat doesn't play like the other games. They take advantage of the period to have its own combat system, but also they're able to actually do something with the story. And even though it's a spin-off, it feels as good as the main games. Actually, better than something. I mean, dude, I beat Yakuza 3 last year. This is better than Yakuza 3, for sure.
I mean, all right, listen. Yakuza 3 is like mid at best.
It felt that way. Especially the ending. Especially the ending.
Yeah, I mean, like, Yakuza 3 just felt like that game felt more of a spin-off than probably this did as a spin-off.
Yeah, this felt great.
So, you know, had to set the record straight with that one.
But no, like, so this is definitely one of the better ones to play. And again, like, this is one of those that if you've never played a Yakuza game before, great entry point, because you don't need to know about the rest of the series.
Yep.
You can just
Although
jump
I'm
in
sure
here.
that if you have played the other ones, like, just that little bit of extra flavor from the rest of the series will probably help you out.
And it's great to just summon a bear and come. Yeah, before Yakuza 7, this one you could just summon a bear and come. Granted, it's a legendary card, so I don't even know if it's like.
You can also summon.
It might have been like because I pre-ordered the game. It might be one of those things that was a bonus and I didn't realize it. So I don't know, but it's still great to just summon a bear in the middle of combat and it like pounce a guy and whack him in the face. You know, just it's a bear.
Isn't there also like the one-winged angel card or something like that?
Oh, there's a Kenny Omega card that is paid DLC. I did not get that.
Oh, really?
All the influencers were paid DLC. Vampy Bit Me, Kenny Omega, Nyanners.
Wait, Nyanners is in it?
Nyanners is one of the cards, yes.
I'm boycotting.
So
I'm boycotting a game I had absolutely no intention of purchasing.
Because you're lame. Because instead, guess what you bought? Guess what you spent money on? You paid money for Destiny 2 Lightfall.
Density.
Density 2, yes.
Destiny 2 Lightfall. Do I have to defend my purchase now?
Nah, I mean, I don't know. Because as I said, like,
are you having a good time? That's the most important.
Yes, I'm having a good time.
Okay.
Shame on you.
Some of these screen caps look really cool.
That's the thing. Like,
okay.
Again, watching SkillUp's video, it does look like the Strand the Strand looks cool. It looks not only underutilized, but also they did the same thing, it looks like, as they did with the new Darkness powers, which is terrible, which is you have a temporary amount of time to use this ability, and that's your tutorial, and we're going to stretch the entire campaign around this. And it's like, oh, Bungie.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. So I think at its core, does anybody remember when Destiny 1 came out, what the general consensus was? Anybody remember?
Not enough loot, not enough content, yada yada.
Right. So the main gist of it was, oh, this campaign is too short. There's not enough to it. And then like people were slowly like, yeah, but okay, this post-game stuff is actually pretty fun. And I think basically this is somewhat of a regression, because as they went, right, like by the time we got to what was the name of it? The Taken King. the campaigns in the original Destiny were clearly getting better. Kings, the Taken King, Rise of Iron both had campaigns that were better than the original Destiny 2 campaign. And then, again, Destiny 2, that campaign was longer, bigger, better than the original one. And then they kind of like fell on their face a couple times with the Destiny 2 expansions and sort of ended up totally rewriting what they did with Forsaken, where they released a really solid expansion and then started drip feeding rather than doing traditional, what they had done up until then was try to do like multiple expansions a year and saying, we're going to basically wait a full year or more to do the next expansion. And we're going to drip feed you content throughout the year.
And the crime there was the fact that they also said, we're never giving you something like Taken King again. Fewer expansions. But I don't.
So they said that. They said that. Now, see, they may have said that, but it ended up not being true because I think both Lightfall and then the Witch Queen in particular was an expansion on the scale of Taken King that also gave you a ton of other. I think the Witch Queen more than not Lightfall, Beyond Light. The Witch Queen more than Beyond Light. I think the scale of the Witch Queen was on the same scale as Taken King, with tons of Witch Queen specific post game activities, a really engaging sort of open world zone and all that other stuff. And so, in that perspective, Lightfall feels like a step backwards. We're supposed to be building up to this grand finale, and the campaign is too short and kind of lame. And even being too short, it still feels padded with these strand sections where, whatever, look inward or whatever it is that you do, meditate your strand meditation, and then you kill enemies with strand for 2 minutes and then it runs out. So yeah, it feels overall like a step backwards, but then at the same time, what they've really perfected are aspects of the sort of ritual activities, where the idea being they want you to sign in at least once a week and go through these specific activities to earn better loot and learn more about the story and all this other stuff. And those are, to me at least, as fun as ever. And they're getting better with this. While they got worse with the storytelling in the expansion, the sort of the motivation to log into Destiny every week and do these other bits of content is, I think, at its highest level that it's ever been, at least for me. So
probably also for PvE specifically, because again,
PvE specifically, PvP is dead in Destiny.
Yeah,
PvP is dead. PvE is clearly their number one focus. There hasn't been a new Gambit map in like 2 years. There hasn't been there maybe like one new Crucible map in the same time. It's been really bad for the PvP community in Destiny, which there probably isn't a PvP community in Destiny anymore. But if you want to log in by yourself, if you have a couple of friends that you regularly play with, Destiny as again, it's sort of like a weekly ritual is honestly the best it's ever been. If you just want to go in, the gunplay feels great. The abilities feel great. The new stuff with Strand is actually a lot of fun once you fully unlock it. But the Lightfall campaign was kind of meh.
Yeah, again, like I didn't play it, but I'm watching Skill Up go through. And firstly, I hate everything about these. What are they? Cloud Striders? Everything about them. Totally wrong. Totally. I'm watching this and I'm like, okay, so remember when Destiny was fantasy in space? Like, space wizards and space knights. Remember when, we talked about, Glory Hammer's second album being the soundtrack for Sinking Destiny, and now it's just, I mean, maybe it is more Glory Hammer now with the 80s aesthetic, but still, it's like...
Well, so there's two Cloud Striders. There's Rohan and the annoying Gen Z guy. And the other guy's annoying for sure. I don't necessarily hate him as much as some people do, because the idea of the character is he's, whatever the backstories of these Cloud Striders, they basically, chosen from among them, and they basically accept a shortened lifespan for the sake of the honor of defending the city for 10 years. Which is funny because in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, everyone only lives for 10 years. You are born and live for 10 years, and you're born basically like a preteen, and you live for 10 years, and you die at the end of the 10 years. You're sent. So it's kind of funny that I started playing Destiny 2 Lightfall.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, where have I heard this 10 years thing before? You serve and protect your people for 10 years and then you die. Anyway, so the idea is, Rohan is he's the older one. He's the voice of wisdom and reason, and he's dealing with this young kid who's stupid and doesn't take anything seriously. And so that's where I don't necessarily hate the character as much as some people does, where, yeah, he's sounds like a millennial's cringy attempt to write a 19-year-old is sort of what, I can't even think of his name is.
Which I was going to say, it's like we are now old enough that we've reached a point where millennials are trying to write the younger generation, and it's so very bad.
Yeah.
We are our parents kind of thing.
I definitely get that. Like that's probably a weak point, is the bad writing on him. I feel like some other characters, longtime characters, have gotten some cool development. Amanda Holiday shows up more in the external content, external to the campaign, and there's like Amanda and Crow stuff and all that, which the fans just love. So.
It's like I said about it's like I said about science fiction. It used to be all about in our last podcast. It used to be all like heavy contemplative stuff, theoretical, with a side of, I wonder if I could bang that. Now that's like the core of it. It feels like, but whatever. I don't even like the look of this new villain or anything. Yeah, that's the thing. Like everything about the story and the lore, what they've done to the lore is like, you might be right. Like, because even like hearing someone say, the public event is better than Escalation Protocol or Blind Well, like it's like the best version of that. Hearing that is like, dang, that almost makes me want to try logging in again, except I'd have to buy the expansion, and I really don't want to do that. Would you agree, or would you maybe not agree, but do you think there is a possibility? Because as I said, like Bungie is definitely working on one or two more projects. One of them is definitely their NetEase project. I do believe they have another one they're working on. Do you believe at this point this is on maintenance mode, and it is like some of Bungie's least members now keeping this alive to keep the cash rolling in, as the greater team members, especially ones that have been there since early Destiny and are like sick of Destiny, are now working on these other projects?
I think that's very possible. I think what it could be is, they're perfecting stuff they've been doing for a long time. That the teams that are the live team that's taking care of the, all of that kind of stuff, that's making the weekly updates and all of that stuff, they're getting really good at their job. But there is something missing in the big picture stuff. So I could believe that. I think the problem is this lingered too long and it wasn't structured well. I think they should have that Beyond Light should have been Destiny 3.
Mm.
I think instead of doing what they did and wiping out, like, at the time, what was probably 2/3 of the content in Destiny 2 with Shadowkeep, they should have planned to end Destiny 2 with Shadowkeep, release Destiny 3 with Beyond Light, and that's when we get all the new zones and all that other stuff. Because I think they messed up. And I think that if they had structured it better, they could have told the story better. They could have done a lot of things better and sort of done a whole reset from the ground up in a Destiny 3. And I think we're just kind of stuck with a somewhat cobbled together, limp to the finish line story. Because they've actually, like, I think they've the vision, having paid somewhat attention to the sort of the big story since day one at this point, I think the big story is the big story they intended to tell. I think it's all of the extra stuff, like that the Cabal males are the ones that lactate and feed the young. Like, why? Why is that in the lore? Like, the stuff like the whole thing with the winnower.
I have a reason. I can't tell you. I'm not going to say it on this podcast.
Yeah, the stuff like the winnower and the gardener,
Fragment like
and the
a
light
like a
and the
dragon
darkness and all of that stuff. Like, that's all been. They seem to be coming to the conclusion of that. Basically, the elevator version of the Destiny 2 story is our universe has existed in an endless cycle where the gardener creates life and the winnower, winnows the life, and eventually the life grows too big and then it collapses on itself and the winnower kills the last of the life in the universe and then it restarts again. And the gardener made a proposition that if he were allowed to
it's Mass Effect again already. Just stop.
No, it's not.
No,
it's not.
It's Kingdom Hearts.
No, listen. I just got to the part where it's not. I just got to the point where it's not Mass Effect. Let me finish telling. The winnower the gardener makes a proposition that if he is allowed to participate in the story, it's almost like God and the devil, right? If that he's allowed to inject himself into the story and guide life, that the winnower won't win this time. That life will actually be able to continue indefinitely in balance without the universe having to die, essentially. And so the now what becomes the conjecture is the winnower is the witness, and what he didn't say in his deal was that he was also going to inject himself into the story and not just watch and sort of let the natural paths happen in the same way that the gardener, the traveler, injected themselves into the story. So we're basically coming to the end here where the traveler has brought all of the intelligent life in the galaxy or whatever to Earth, where they're going to make their last stand against the forces of darkness and the winnower who has destroyed countless universes in the past. And that's basically what's going to be the final shape, which is the last thing about finding the perfect balance between life and death and light and darkness and all that stuff. So now you don't need to play it.
Bro, that is like almost 1-to-1 Kingdom Hearts.
Yes.
Not even a joke. All right. The big question I have for you, Steve, is like with this new expansion, is it going to be good for new players to jump into?
I mean, I think any new player can start with an expansion. I think the expansions are the best places to start, just because they give you some structure and sort of prepare you for the various activities. Whereas if you just start like in the middle, you're kind of lost. Like if you were to like right now, the expansion came out in February. If you start in like September, you're going to log in and the game's going to be talking about whatever, seasonal ongoing story stuff is happening in September, which is going to really be like it's like, coming into Game of Thrones and season 5 kind of thing.
I mean, it
Whereas
kind of already is that way though, because you don't.
I guess maybe it's more like coming in at Game of Thrones season 5, episode 5, versus coming in at the start of season 5, watching the recap, and then trying to pick up the story from there. But yeah, I think the thing is this is a game that has been telling an ongoing story for 10 years now. It's been telling an ongoing story.
Not even just that though, because it's even redone its mechanics so many times, and now you've got more than the 3 base classes. You got the darkness classes as well, and you're gonna have all these characters, and you're gonna have the vendors, you're gonna have the public events. There's so much that's going to need to be explained, and
one thing Destiny has done an absolute crap job of is there are games I've played, stories, other things, where even as somebody who knows the whole thing, you can see how somebody could drop in at any point, like drop in on the sequel kind of thing, and it just feels like, okay, like this is a guy, we're supposed to know who he is, but it's fine. Destiny's not like that. Destiny's like, this is a guy, and if you don't know who he is, none of this makes any sense at all. Like, we're still talking about Cade 6. Like, Cade 6 died.
Yeah, he died
4 years ago, or whatever it was now. Like, and so, like, we're still talking about, like, how this guy's connected with Cade 6's death, and I'm like, well, like, we're like 6 degrees of mess away from this being comprehensible to a new player.
You can watch the beginning of Dragon Ball Z and not realize that Goku fought Piccolo in the past because he was actually evil. Sort of. Like, in other words,
he was evil, kind of, sort of, and was a king, and also it wasn't actually
him. It technically wasn't actually him that killed all of Goku's friends.
What happened is Bungie watched anime and they're like, "Yo, all right, let's give it a shot."
Some of the younger writers, and it's going to be like the writing staff changed several times as this game went by. And again, that is where, like, in a lot of ways, your long running television series is an apt description, because very few television series do I keep watching all the way through to the end, because most of them end up getting terrible, even with the same showrunner sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, I love Stargate SG-1, right? Stargate SG-1, once it hits a certain point, absolute garbage. So it's just how it is. But that's enough Destiny there for now. We can move on to something that is objectively better in every single way that Joey's already beaten. Gal Guardian's Demon Purge. Make it get more clear that this is part of a franchise. Tell me, Joey, what franchise is this all a part of?
Mega Man Zero. No, it's part of Galgun, which is something I built a brand off of for a bit, and totally have not been, just leaving in the dust and escaping, because it's not a good way to be. But with all that in mind, I'm not gonna lie, this is like my game of the year so far. Like, I absolutely adore this game because Inti Creates did it, and if there's one thing that Inti Creates is great at, it's making 2D action platformers.
I can concur with that. This is pretty darn good.
I love, like, back in, like, and I like at Too Many Games in 2015, they actually had a booth there, and I was able to speak with the rep for a bit, and there's some really passionate people that work at Inti Creates, which is awesome. And you can tell that they are passionate about what they do. This game is it's a Castlevania-like, not to be confused with a Metroidvania, because it is more traditional level focused.
Yeah.
You can backtrack later. but that it plays out more like a level, more like level by level, boss by boss. But there's also a splash of Mega Man Zero thrown in there. And I go way back with Mega Man Zero and the Game Boy Advance, which was also Inti Creates. Love that series to death, for better or for worse, because it's not 100% good 100% of the time, but when it's good, it's good. And if there's anything where it shined, it's in the level design and the boss fights. The boss fights of Gal Guardians are so good and so challenging, but when you understand how each boss works, you throttle them, and it feels so good to do that. Like,
it does have that element to it, because like that the toughest part for me isn't toughest part for me for boss fights is it takes me a while to figure it out, but once I figured it out, usually one character has died, so you have to revive them. You're not full health, you're not at your full self, and then you die again, and you have to keep going so you don't use a continue up kind of a thing.
Right. And that's how it is. And I feel like that's a good way for them to prepare you for the hard mode, which is where if one character gets downed, you lose a life. You have to use a continue.
Ooh.
Yeah, and co-oping that would be an absolute nightmare. There are certain aspects of this game where I know it's a nightmare to co-op, because
you got to be in communication, and that's the thing too, because one of the the melee characters, a glass cannon, less health, but they do more damage, but you got to get up close in order to, do that damage. And there are a lot of situations where if you're not careful, you go in for an attack and you get hit.
Yeah. It's, there is a clear strategy, for what you should do in certain situations. But when you're down a character, it's nothing but risk versus reward, and you find yourself having to slow down and be very careful.
And that happened to me. You might remember it, there's a level where you have to go through certain doors in order to unlock other doors. And I went through the wrong door after one of my characters fell in a pit, which that's the worst. You could have full health, fall in the pit. That character's gone, you respawn at the last checkpoint, and you got to go find your character. And at that point, I went down the wrong door, and I couldn't go back. So I had
done that.
One character to go through an entire section and hope I don't die.
Yeah. Or hope that you get further so that, like, when you do die, it's, at a checkpoint that's further ahead.
Yeah.
And there is a strategy there, too. Like, do you just... all right, so one character is dead. Do you, and you have to pick them back up. Do you just die anyway so that you can come back with full health and waste to continue? Or do you just keep going? And that's where some of the other abilities come into play. Because each character also has unique abilities, and they're good for traversal and attacks, and finding secrets. So it really does... when you do backtrack, it really does force you to really think outside of the box and really pay attention to the level design, because you are going to come across things.
Yeah.
So and that being said,
well, some of it's interesting because I realized going through that level as well, because one of the things you unlock is the ability to freeze things, including enemies. And if you're too hasty, you'll kill an enemy that you could have frozen to get to a higher point.
Yep. You can set up enemies to be, an object of traversal. And you can use that to find secrets. And the secrets can be increase your health, increase your defense, increase your attack, extra lives. Or, because it is oh my God. This game, half of it feels like halfway through they were like, "Hey guys, why don't we reskin this and make it part of the Galgun series?" Because the game is surprisingly absent of degeneracy.
It's still there.
It's there, and when it comes in, oh my lord.
Oh, even worse. Because I was thinking of the blue girl getting very mesmerized by a certain boss.
By a certain boss that is, the piranha plant from Little Shop of Horrors. But it's got tentacle arms, and the rest writes itself.
Pretty much.
And
She's
that's actually the big pervert of the series.
And that's the shame of it, because Steve, I know the other day you were like, what other kinds of like Metroidvania action games, side-scrolling, can I share with my kids? And it's like, this is 50% ready for them. But they are not ready for the other 50%.
No, they are not. It goes off the rails after a certain point.
Yeah, I was kind of looking through screenshots and stuff on there, and I'm like, yeah,
because it is bloody and gory too. Surprisingly, like,
yeah, it was like I was looking at reviews on. I was like, well, is One Punch Man something that an 11-year-old can watch?
No,
and it was like. No, they were like, well, it's funny because it was exactly as I'm recalling it. It's like, yeah, it's like 75% of the show is probably fine for like a 10, 11-year-old. And then 25% of it is absolutely not okay.
He explodes a guy and there's guts in the very first episode. Like,
what's the guts? I don't know. Yeah.
It's, like, oh my goodness. Like,
like there is a lot about this game that
I remember stuff from season 2 is where I remember a lot of stuff that I'm just like, yeah, not child appropriate.
Yeah, just give them some made for TV Dragon Ball and you're good.
Oh gosh.
That'll do it for him. Specifically made for TV.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But
anyway, this game, I absolutely adore it. Despite the degeneracy, because it's a pixel art game. It's a lot easier to play it up for laughs. But I have a history with Galgun. And there comes a point where it's no longer a joke. And they crossed that line a long time ago. But I gotta say, like, as a legitimate platformer, this game is absolutely fantastic. Like, you gotta play it. It's so much fun. Co-op, I'm definitely curious about, but I have a feeling that maybe this isn't 100% designed for co-op, so it'll be a hell of a challenge to try and coordinate what to do.
Hey man, Extra Life, Struggle Mania.
I know. It's something we could try, something we can pass around. But it is a ton of fun. It's like the pixel art is incredible. The music is really good. The pixel the animations for all the enemies are like really good. There's a lot more animation to the enemies than I'm used to. What's also surprising is that this is the first time that the main characters have been kind of voiced in English. They don't say much outside of like saying their attacks and grunting for their attacks and like saying each other's names and having like little reaction sounds, kind of like the Zelda games when their character portraits show up for dialogue. So that's kind of a neat little surprise, but it's fully voiced in Japanese. So all of the dialogue has all of the text has dialogue attached to it. So nice little stuff. Play this. Avoid Galgun, but play this. This game is really, really good, and I'm trying to be spoiler free because Chris, I know you're playing it, but listen, you haven't delved into the degeneracy yet. You'll know when you get to it.
I was gonna say it's like this one isn't nearly degenerate, but you know what? That just changing it to Gal Guardians might help prepare people. Because I know there's a lot of folks that had dude, I didn't even realize. I thought, oh, look, they're making a new game with these two characters. And you're like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, Galgun universe. I'm like, wait, what? You're like, yeah, they were the two sisters from the. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're right.
Yep,
So
they sure are.
yeah, they're expanding the Gal Gun universe.
Yeah.
So
There now, and I have to point this out, although this game is my game of the year, I know it's going to get dethroned by something, probably a Yakuza game, because that's how it goes. Hell, I'll even say Metroid Prime Remaster. That's not even fair, but I'm throwing it out there because it's Metroid and it's my baby. But this game, like, is like an 8 out of 10 for me, and it would have been a 10 out of 10, but it commits a cardinal sin of platformers, of games where, you know, backtracking is available. It commits a cardinal sin. I'm not going to say what it is, because when you get to it, you know it, and you're going to be upset.
backtracking is mandatory.
I'm not gonna fully say. I'm not gonna fully say, but I am gonna say you're not fully wrong, but you're not fully right either.
Well,
So-
I'll find out. We'll see.
Yes, you will, and you'll be like, "You got to be kidding me." But
Well,
then
I'll be somewhat
be like
warned
me.
at least.
Yeah, but then you also be like me, and then like can like keep chugging forward and still love it, because it does do a good job at, you know, taking things that may have been familiar and mixing them up. So there you go.
Well,
That's my glowing review of this absolutely fantastic game.
I already know what is dethroning that game, however, and it comes out next Friday.
Oh my god, it does.
I played the Resident Evil 4 Chainsaw demo, and you know what? If you guys recall, I was actually a little concerned because, and I still stand by it, Resident Evil 4 is a game that does not need to be remade. The
It's
original
on the edge. It's on the edge.
It depends on your perspective, because the thing is, it's one of those games that, okay, even though people have imitated it, what other game plays like it? And part of that is, again, like, because people will point out, oh, you can't strafe, you can't do this. Like, yeah, but they took that into account with the design.
Right.
And it works. Like,
This is, like, that's the big thing about Resident Evil 4, is that what makes it great was how it so well worked within its limitations. It was so aware of the hardware that it was being built for. It was so well aware of its limitations, and it just programmed everything around it so nicely that, like, what I was so concerned, because what does Resident Evil 4 become when you lift those limitations? Does it become Gears of War? I hope not.
Well, playing through the demo, actually, before we even get to the demo again, where I really got worried was when we first saw the reveal of the opening house.
Mm-hmm.
Because firstly, it looked way too much like the beginning of Village, right down to going into the basement and then going back upstairs. It looked too much like they were lifting recent Resident Evil RE Engine assets, and they were trying to make it too serious to this. I was worried they're going to screw up Leon, and very concerned about someone like Ashley. But granted, at that same reveal, there were other elements that were very familiar. So it's like, okay, what direction is this going? And I do think on the whole, it's closer to the Dead Space remake that just came out. Or if you do really want to make the comparison, going from Resident Evil 1 to Resident Evil remake on GameCube might be closer. But even then, I don't like, this is going to be one of those, gradients of how to do a remake. Because the Chainsaw demo, it feels very much like Resident Evil 4, to an extent that I was actually surprised. They definitely took certain things into consideration. Like, I can't just, like I've told you before, I have a route in that opening village that I go through. I go into the one house, I grab a bunch of the items, hop out the window, go around, grab the shotgun shells in the tower, drop down, go in the house that spawns the Chainsaw Man, grab items, grab shotgun, grab grenade. Then I go around the corner of that roof. No one ever throws anything. No one puts any ladders up. And they all bottleneck. And it's so easy to kill them all. Well, at least kill the Chainsaw Man.
Right.
You can't...
Or you do like I do, and you just you hold off from going into the house that spawns everything, that spawns the chainsaw guy. You go everywhere else almost, and you avoid that house, and they eventually just stop. They eventually just go away.
Oh yeah, yeah. The chainsaw man doesn't even have to spawn, but then you don't get his treasure.
No, and that's the best part about Resident Evil 4 is all the risk versus reward.
But there's an interesting trick here, because no matter what you do, there will be a chainsaw man that spawns. The funny thing is, if you defeat that chainsaw man before going in the house, you can get 2 to spawn.
I think technically in the original you could also get 2 that spawn.
Maybe you could. I don't know.
Because if you go into that tower that's in the village initially, you can hear a chainsaw guy revving it up, but
maybe it depends. Maybe it depends on if you get close enough to a certain spawn point. But yeah. That's the thing, because up there they'll start chucking Molotov cocktails anyway. New surprise this time. Oh no! If you go in the clock, they do. They always do. As long as you hang out in that clock tower. If you don't come down, they start tossing Molotov cocktails.
Yeah, they never throw anything at me. They just kind of hang out down there, and I could like throw grenades if I wanted to.
There's no way.
Yeah. And see, this is the beauty of Resident Evil 4, because like everybody has their own little strategy for things.
But every time I played on GameCube, I played on Wii, I played on PC now. Like I played on PS4.
I would go up there, nobody would throw anything.
That's so weird because it's so consistent for me. I think you're lying. I think you gotta be lying.
I would be up there and I would hang out for a few minutes and I would hear a chainsaw revving up behind me, but he doesn't show up. He doesn't actually aggro. Like he's on the map, but doesn't aggro. It's interesting.
But
until you actually go up.
The big thing about Resident Evil 4 though is because what Resident Evil does as a series is it challenges a player's resourcefulness, and the series is so replayable because even again starting with me, I started with the remake on GameCube, and what playing through again does is you know where everything is. You look at the map. You know what enemies are where, so you figure out what is your route going to be, which rooms are you going to abandon so you don't risk Crimson Heads, which rooms are you going to most commonly use so you know where to burn the dead zombies, and which weapons do you want for this run, for this event. It's all about like efficiency and maximizing your resourcefulness. Resident Evil 4 takes a very different angle towards it because it's more action oriented, but it really is how do you best make use of all of your equipment. If you are using just one gun until it's out of ammo, you are doing it wrong. If you are, under most circumstances, not always moving, you are doing it wrong. There are some locations, like again, that opening village where if you find a bottleneck, that is actually your best spot to hang out. But on the whole, it really is about how resourceful are you with what you've been given. Resident Evil 4 Remake seems like it really is going further. So even though you have more mobility, right?
Mm-hmm.
That knife parry. And it's funny because they never had a tutorial pop up and tell me how to do it. I just, it tells you the basic instructions of here's how you pull up the knife or whatever. But I just instinctively blink. Now, granted, big gamer brain playing games for over 30 years of my life now. So instinct. But it's one of those things where they manage it so if you've played video games, you know what to do to parry with the knife. And it's effective. It's great. They've added a twist to how and they kind of play with the fact that most people playing this already know, right? They're playing with the fact that this game is already well known. So they, instead of like hiding the Las Plagas, I've seen people show that like you get a headshot, you blow, a head off, you can see little bits of Plagas tentacles like wriggling still. Or there are ways where if you do a perfect deflect, you can chop a limb off. And when you kill the thing, like the little Plagas tentacles are wriggling in where that wound is. So they have all of this stuff in there that, because of the melee combat, it'll be like Resident Evil 6 wanted the melee combat to be, but good. Because it's going to be the same, where you're going to be using your weapons. Like, under most circumstances, your pistol is there to open up opportunities for melee attacks. And once you have that going, you're going to find all kinds of things. And also, like that one, like you one of those houses you mentioned from the original game, it did not have an exit. You could get yourself trapped in there because of how small a space it is. Not so in this one. They have windows where there weren't windows before, but that also means you have fewer safe zones because there's more areas for enemies to flank. Right. So this, like you've said before, like Resident Evil 4 is a special game for me as well. I still remember, someone brought the demo disc to one of our game club meetings when I was in college. Everyone passed the paddle trying to get through this village and just dying. I think one person finally got to survive till the end. Which is basically just all you need to do is survive long enough that time runs out. Right. And then when the final version came out, a buddy of mine bought it. And I asked, hey, can I play, use my save card and play your game? He's like, yeah, sure. And what ended up happening is our schedules synced up. So we had leapfrog kind of sessions where he played and I watched him play. Then I, using the knowledge he had, I would start my game and then I'd play through what he played, but then I'd go further. And then he'd watch me go further, and when I stopped, he'd then play up to where I went, and then I watched him go further. So each of us was kind of uncovering something new. But at the same time, we were still facing, we were still prepared for what the other guy faced. And I've never experienced playing a game like that, and even now I've played the game so many times. It's definitely the Resident Evil I probably played the most, aside from maybe 5 because of the co-op element, which is kind of funny to say. But, and Village is already almost there with like 6 whole playthroughs. But no, like this feels like it's got the right DNA. It feels like they really are going at it with the right spirit. I'm still a little concerned, but even Leon has some wisecracks at points. They kept the where's everyone going bingo line. So
no.
I don't think they have to, man. I do think they're going to...
They got rid of Ashley's ballistics though.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I imagine there's going to be... Luis makes a comment about that because like
no,
he's such a jerk. He's such a douchebag.
I love him for that. It's clear they changed Lewis too, but no, I have a feeling they've made a number of changes to Ashley. They've even said
they want this to be a little bit more serious.
There's that, but there's other elements too that I think, like they've mentioned, they want to make her quote unquote more useful. So,
I mean, I've seen some things. And yeah, she is a bit more useful.
But that's the thing, like but even that, it's not like I'm not going to complain about every little change. But there are still things that do have me concerned, because the best part about Resident Evil 4, that original version, Leon is the only Resident Evil protagonist at that point in that game that isn't serious about everything. He's a dorky version of Dante, because Dante is just cool, right? Dante's able to like mock everything and everybody laughs and joins in with him. Leon, he's trying to have the same kind of quips and he sucks at it. And that's what makes him great, because he's a gigantic dork. But that's the thing. He's not... Because then you immediately go into Resident Evil 5, and Chris Redfield is super serious about everything. Resident
Evil 5 is way too serious.
And Resident Evil 6 is too. Everybody, including Leon, are too serious about everything. And it's like, what makes Resident Evil 4, even though it's a stupid story, work is that all the villains are hyper serious. Leon is not. And
it's a good and fun dynamic. Like, it's something that works great for video games. As a movie or a show, probably would be a bit annoying.
It depends on the execution.
It would strongly depend on that, but I think it's a lot easier to just kind of make everything serious than rather like, the main protagonist, try to be funny.
Again, it's because I talked about it with Steve a bit when we were talking about Forspoken and the protagonist, and it's like, you can do a jerk in a setting like this well, and that is Ash in Army of Darkness. So you can technically do that. You can technically make... Then again...
So you're saying you can do it if it's a male character, but not a female character?
I hate you.
Damn! He's calling you out, bro. You're canceled.
I hate you.
You don't think girls can be funny?
Podcast is canceled. It's the last episode. Good night, everybody. No more A Steve.
Anyway, Bayonetta.
Oh wait, I forgot. We actually had more. We had one more topic.
Oh yeah, we did.
We did. I was like, oh, we're gonna get done a little early tonight. Nope. Guess what, Steve? Tell us about how you're wrong with Elden Ring.
I mean,
we actually talked about it a little bit the other night. I
get it. I get it. I get the game. Like, I understand it. I understand why people like it. I understand why I'm bad at it. I got through the stupid castle. The what's it called? What's the name of the castle? Stormvale. Stormvale Castle. Stormvale Castle killed Godric the Grafted. It's like, I'm honestly like enjoying the exploration and the open world elements of it. I think that's part of what makes it work is at any point there's something to do that's not necessarily super challenging. Like, you can find one of these little dungeons, and even though the skeletons totally suck, you can kind of like sprint around, dodge their attacks, find whatever's down there, fight a boss who's not nearly as like a mini boss or whatever they are. So I did a lot of that. I did that other castle with the chick that dies.
The Leonine Misbegotten Castle?
Yeah, I think that's
the revolting demi-humans?
Yes, those guys. Yeah.
The castle you were supposed to do before Stormvale?
No, I did that before Stormvale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I went that way, kind of felt like, some of the stuff's a little too hard. Then I went back, did everything, fought the first boss.
Margit, the Fell Omen?
Margit, and all of that. So, like, I think I've put about 25 hours total in, and I was kind of exploring after Stormvale, and I kind of just didn't really have it in me anymore to play Elden Ring right now. So, it's like, it's one of those things, again, like, I get it. I get why people love this. I understand the appeal. My build is probably stupid. I'm running dual katanas right now, which is, I know it's stupid, but I like it anyway.
That's exactly what Let Me Solo Her does.
Dual katanas.
It's part of the meta, yeah.
Yeah, well, I know I know it's meta. I feel like I maybe need a little bit more skill to do it well, but then again, I doing okay, I guess. So
this is my thing that I realized with Elden Ring, the likes of Elden Ring and Dark Souls. Thing is, it's an exacerbated problem with Elden Ring compared to Dark Souls and stuff, and where Bloodborne doesn't have this problem. And I don't think Sekiro does either, but I got other issues with Sekiro. Bloodborne, you don't have character classes really. You have fewer stats that you need to level up. You have a fewer selection of weapons. You don't have to worry about encumbrance. So whatever garb you wear is what you want to wear. You have the same dodge roll no matter what. There's largely one general way with slight variances to play the Bloodborne. And it works, and it's great. Dark Souls, by introducing builds, you introduce the possibility to build something that's not very effective. With Elden Ring, the possibility is even worse, in part because it takes so long to level up just once at a point that you're really paranoid about misspending a point. And what's also really weird is they eventually do drown you in larval tears, so you can respec at any time. They don't drown you in smithing stones, so you can't exactly swap weapons at any time. There's not there is and isn't a lot of experimentation permitted in the game. So, and that's where I've been lately, realizing, you know what? I keep doing heavier armor builds, but trying to keep that mid-roll. I keep doing slightly heavier weapons. What if I try some lighter weapons and some lighter armor and see where it gets me? Still not doing a light roll, enough for a light roll, but it's an interesting experiment, especially because it's okay, by this point, especially after fighting a bunch of PvP griefers, it's all right, clearly I need weapons that do status effects kind of a thing. And so
yeah, I think right now my weight is too high for the rest of my build. But
I mean, if you're fat rolling, then yeah, you gotta take some stuff off.
Yeah, most players.
That took me a while to realize. Initially, when I was fighting Margit, I realized I was actually heavily loaded, which wasn't working with a build where I needed to roll more. So I swapped out stuff to get down to medium. But I think you're right. I think I need to get down to the light to actually be able to do this dual katana thing effectively.
Most players stick to medium roll.
Yeah,
okay. Light roll is really hard to stick to.
Yeah, because your load percentage has to be extremely low.
And that's where the blue dancer doll is. I was wondering if I could really use her because she increases your damage for lighter loads. The thing is, once you're over 30 in encumbrance, it's useless. You have to be 8, 16, or 20 encumbrance to different degrees for it to have any kind of effect. And that's light, which means you're not getting a lot of protection, which means you have to be really good at timing your dodges. Yeah. And so it's again, it's one of those things where trying to find the optimal is such a pain. And that's the funny thing, because I remember talking to people where they prefer the Dark Souls style where you can experiment with different builds and it helps vary the game up. But me, I like mastering a system, but I like mastering a system in the actual actions part. I don't like the maths and statistics and the spreadsheets of what is the most optimal. I've never been a good min-maxer. I'm not good at min-maxing. I was never good at that part of Final Fantasy. So, I'm really not good at that at Elden Ring or something. So there's all these people that know just what talismans and trinkets and other things to equip to maximize a certain build. And one-shot enemies, because you have I have this spell, this spell, this spell, then I use my flask of boons, and now I can one-hit kill this boss. And it's okay, I'm sure that's fun. Whereas I again, for me, Bloodborne, it's okay, I'm using
just pull up the wiki, dude.
Yeah, just look up the wiki. I'm using.
You don't want the game. You don't want to play the meta game. You want to play the reflexes, combos, learning attacks, and fighting game.
Yep. Even though I'm even not great at that. I mean, just again, you can look at some of my Bloodborne fighting style and you can tell. But that's the funny thing though. Again, like Bloodborne, that's really what it comes down to. Is in some ways knowing like, okay, when do I like what enemies are weak to fire, what enemies are weak to bolt paper, what enemies do I use this item on. There is that degree of it, but it's only a part of your strategy versus, you just need to know when to dodge. You need to know when their attacks end, when to go in and strike. And some enemy attacks in this are, and you haven't even gotten anywhere near where they get bad.
Probably not.
Like as I said, man, like once you're through Lindell and you get to the snowy areas, that's where the game's like, that's where my frustration, I went from, I'm playing this game to beat this game. And that's why I never beat Millennia. I gave her a few tries and I realized it was going to take too much effort. And I was just already having less of a fun time with the game. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to the final boss. And even then, that took me so many attempts before I finally rolled credits. And I was like, it's funny because once you start the new game and you go back to Limgrave, you'll love it again. But when I rolled those credits, part of me was like, F this game. But there were too many moments that I looked fondly on. And when I went back to replay earlier parts, it was still great. But the problem of too much of a good thing is you inevitably have more bad things too. And I think that's the issue with Elden Ring. It's so big that you couldn't help but have a lot of bad stuff in there too.
I mean, when you're bad at the game.
Oh, please.
In all honesty, like I had, we've gone down this road before, but I had very few issues with the game, honestly. But also it's really how I ended up playing it. This was the first Souls game where I played it mostly single player. Like, I want to say maybe 85% of it I played on my own. But the build I was going for was really, really simple. It was just pure strength with a hint of dexterity. And I got the grafted greatsword, and once I got that, I was just slapping bosses left and right. I was just unzipping my pants, letting it flop out, and they would die.
Jeez.
It was, and I know some people might think like, oh, well, there's no challenge to the game. That's boring. Like, no. After playing Dark Souls 1 and rage quitting because of its garbage mechanics, yeah, I said it. After beating Bloodborne, including the DLC, after beating Dark Souls 3, this game has so much in it that I absolutely adore and was able to experience on my own and figure things out on my own that I couldn't really do before. And I found it to be extremely beautiful. Even the parts that were supposed to be extremely difficult, once I started taking my time, just kind of hanging back and letting enemies just, skitter about, and then go explore and run through some catacombs, run through some tunnels, run through some mines and all that stuff, and level up a bit. These guys were absolutely no trouble. I died plenty, sure, but it was one of those things where I was able to really, really enjoy the world because I was running around like Doom Guy being the traumatic event. My character was not experiencing PTSD. They were the source of the PTSD. And then I got my ending. And when I got it, I was like, this is the right one. This was the right ending.
Oh, that's right. You got the madness ending, didn't you?
Sure did. Sure did, and it was the right way to go because, like, the world. I haven't felt this way about a world since, like, Silent Hill 2, where the world was very much a character, the enemy against you, the thing that was trying to keep you down. So
burn it all.
yeah, it felt good to just like drop a nuke, essentially, kinda, I guess. And yeah, it like, especially in terms of how these Souls games go, when I was the one running around doing that, I definitely felt like the villain. And every ending in a Souls game is like, I don't know if this was a good thing that I did.
Yeah, that's the nature of these. There is no such thing as a good ending.
But yeah, the big thing that I absolutely love about this, and that I really do think like the way to get the most out of this game is to have multiple save files, all with different builds, and you just kind of that is how you experiment. But that's how it was in Dark Souls 3, 2, and 1. Well, I guess 2. I never played 2. But that's kind of how it was in those ones. But it really honestly, if you're gonna go through it the first time through, I'm just gonna recommend for anyone a pure strength build. It's gonna allow you to enjoy the world. You're gonna be slapping everything left and right, and you're going to be enjoying the world because of it.
Jump attacks too.
Right.
They break poise real easy.
Oh my god, yes they do.
Well,
Pure strength build, jump attacks.
Dude, jump attacks legit, especially with this grafted greatsword, which was like, I was just hitting people with a building from above. It's so good. It's so good.
Well, 2 katanas though, you'll have the bleed meta going because that's
that's what if you can quickly. That seems to be the strategy. Is like when you can quickly trigger the bleed, you wipe dudes out very quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do that, but also hit people with a building and bosses die in like 3 hits. You could go with the bleed meta, but
but you can also hit people with a building.
Meanwhile, I'm just trying to find something that I like, so it's like, let me experiment with Ice Axe and Bleed Dagger, and it's probably terrible. There's going to be all kinds of people like, dude, your build is terrible, it's the worst.
Like, and I'm not going to lie, when I would do PvP with my pure strength build, I did not get far. But, Chris, as you saw when we were playing the other day, and we got invaded a couple times, I would hit them with that bloody slash, and they would be nearly dead, if not dead.
Well, that's the funny thing. The one time we got invaded on my new build, I was already dead. And I got, by the time you got to resummon me, you died. And so it was a moot point.
Well, we were also fighting a boss.
Yeah, that's something that was a crappy discovery. If you're playing a world boss, so just a boss on the open world, you can still get invaded. And yeah, it stinks. And I've talked to people about this. It's not just that Elden Ring is the new hotness, it's that the PvP situation is really garbage for Elden Ring.
It's always been garbage, though.
Well, no, what I mean is even the PvP players aren't given... Like, you'd think with the Colosseum they are, but I guess it's the biggest thing that makes it different is that people can get the runes from PvP. Or it's something else, like people just want to grief. People just want to go there and screw other people over or something, because that's the thing. It's like, what kind of an honorable... If someone really wants competition in PvP, right? Why would they go after us when we're fighting a boss?
Because there is an encouragement for invading people. Like there's certain things that you can get from it. Like I remember in Dark Souls 3, in order to deepen your relationship with the Covenant, you would have to go into PvP and kill people. But so here's the thing about PvP in Souls games. Like they would build things for PvP, and then they would just kind of not adjust them. They wouldn't balance it. They would kind of give it like the Smash Brothers treatment, where it's like sure, you can play competitively by, playing a very specific way, but we're not gonna cater to it. And then like, so in Elden Ring, they give these people a stadium, which is like people would make makeshift stadiums in the other games. Like they would find a spot that is like open, and then they would like take all the colored pebbles and like
they
build a ring.
They did that with Elden Ring even.
Yeah, they do that with Elden Ring as well, because these people need to go outside and touch some grass. So they give them a coliseum. It's like, okay, here's a rock, go play. That's essentially what the developers did. They didn't adjust the PvP, and they're never going to. So when it comes to like, this is what I don't like about this, is that when you want to just co-op, you get punished for it. At least in Bloodborne, you can prevent it from happening.
Yeah, you can find the bell ringer.
But the PvP in Bloodborne is a lot more fair. In that, there aren't bills. It's not really easy to min-max. But in the other Souls games, you can. And it's not fun. I would hate in Dark Souls 3. All I wanted to do was co-op with a friend, and then I would get invaded by some dude who's only wearing their underpants and some stupid hat and has a stupid, like, basic-ass hand axe. But they turn invisible until they get too close to you, and then you try to hit them, and then somehow they have the perfect parry, and they can one-shot you with that.
Not just that, the netcode is absolutely terrible, and people are finding exploits all the time.
It's bad.
And I've noticed that when we play too. There's a lot of people where I should technically hit and don't, or something like that. Like
they've never enhanced the netcode except for in Dark Souls 1 Remastered, which is the only remastering of that game they ever did, by the way. And yes, I'm mad about paying for that game.
And yeah, but anyways, naturally, this went from like Steve's experience to just our general overall experience.
I'll just like talk about Elden Ring some more, because that's what we do.
You know what I'm not looking forward to?
What's that?
I'm not looking forward to the online discussion regarding which is better, Tears of the Kingdom or Elden Ring. Because I don't care.
I think it's going to be Elden Ring anyway, so,
They're going to have the loudest fans, because the funny thing about Zelda being a mainstream property is a lot of its fans don't live on the internet. Or at least don't live in the same places. No, okay, you're right. There's a lot of fans that do live on the internet and have their ships.
And they love Zelda a little too much.
They do. So yeah, it's going to be an annoying argument either way, because you're going to have the two fan bases.
You know what? I know the perfect tiebreaker for this, okay? The perfect tiebreaker for whether or not Elden Ring is better than Tears of the Kingdom or vice versa. Which has the better porn?
I'd hate to say that's terrible, and yet, at the same time, I still remember Randy Pitchford trying to talk up Battleborn by being like, hey guys, we have porn of our characters. And it's like, bro, Overwatch over here.
Yeah.
Like,
Overwatch got you beat, and you know what? That game's irrelevant now.
I mean, that's the whole reason he was trying to talk it up, because of Overwatch having all that. Oh, gosh.
Anyway, pure strength build. Do it. It's fun.
All right. Pure strength build.
Start a whole new character. See how it works for you.
That would be a whole new character. I don't recommend you do that now if you're tired of it. I would say just take a break. Take a long break. And come back. And then pure strength build. Get yourself a great sword, and then eventually a colossal great sword, and then just go ham.
You know what was fun?
Jumping heavy attacks. You
know what was fun, because it does change a lot of that beginner experience, or did for me. Starting as a level 1 wretch.
I mean, yeah, because all you can do from there is create any build you want.
Yup, and all you got is a club.
Nice.
So you gotta
bungle boy.
You don't realize it's like, wait a minute, I gotta find a shield. I feel like I gotta find a shield, and I'm wondering if I want to start as a wretch again to kind of reset my mentality towards the game, to be like, let me have light equipment for light rolls and play like Bloodborne. Only the problem with that is Bloodborne had a riposte.
It did.
Elden Ring does not. So
Pure strength build. Do it. You won't.
I won't, because I've already gone that route, and I don't really like the pure strength weapons. I like quick weapons, man. If I was good with pure strength weapons, I'd be playing heavy weapons on Monster Hunter more. And the dual daggers for a reason.
I mean, that's a different game.
It is, but it's got some similarities. Different game, but it's a surprising amount of similarities, including heavy weapons with a big wind up, and then you get just tanked by a giant dragon. But
sure,
I know all about that. That's actually kind of why I went with the like bleed katana thing, is because of my experience trying to do a hammer build in Monster Hunter.
It was the hammer build, okay.
Ooh. I mean, the hammer is great when you're doing flippy moves through the air.
This was evidently recommended to a beginner. And this is why you don't trust... Like, that's the funny thing. Dude, the similarities are there. Like, because you talk to, like, experienced Monster Hunter players, and it's like, oh, it's easy. You just do blah, 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 blah. It's like, dude, you've been playing since the PlayStation 2. Shut up.
It's easy.
You don't know what's good for
You hit them in the head. You hit them in the head, and they get stunned, and then you hit them again, and then when they get unstunned, you hit them in the head again, and they get stunned, and it's great. Except for the hit detection is so wonky, or the stun doesn't proc consistently, and so you hit them in the head, and they don't get stunned, and then they eat you and your cat.
And your dog, too.
The end.
We do need to... You know what? Monster Hunter Rise is on Game Pass. We should take you through that sometime. But first,
dude.
hopefully next time we'll have some of the Exoprimal Open Beta to talk about, because I want to play with that with both of you.
Yeah, I'll go download that now.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that on my Xbox as well. I have it on PC, but just in case, like I said, just in case the PC version is doo-doo butt, I can at least play it on console.
I'm going to go through any like preliminary like single player stuff before you can multi with people before I go to bed tonight. But hopefully tomorrow night we can play with you guys, and then next time during the podcast.
Tomorrow night I will not be able to.
You stink. Be a loser like me with no social life.
No, I got to watch wrestling.
Wrestling.
Yeah, I got to watch redneck anime.
Humbug.
I got to watch a dude get stabbed in the head with a fork.
That's only on the pay-per-view.
Yeah, and I'm going to rewatch the pay-per-view tomorrow.
Oh, that's what you're doing. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know. Maybe we can arrange... Maybe, I don't know. Maybe people will be home on Saturday night or Sunday afternoon. But either way, that's all for the podcast. So hope you guys enjoyed hearing us talk about Elden Ring for the umpteenth time. Everybody...
It's the show's favorite game.
Evidently. Hope everybody has a good night. Thank you guys, of course, for joining me. Adam Devav, I can never know how to pronounce that screen name.
Just Adam.
It's Adam.
Just call her Adam.
Asuna, Salomega's in the chat according to this list. So thank you guys for hanging around. I hope everybody has a good night, and thank you for those that listen to the VOD. So good night, everybody.
Have a good night.